Before we begin with the story, don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. It helps us know what kind of content you guys like the most and what we need to improve on. Now let's begin. Help! Help me! The voice echoed through the trees, sounding eerily familiar. Katie froze, the hair on the back of her neck standing up. It had started as a fun weekend getaway. Katie, her boyfriend Mark, and their friends Emily and Jake decided to escape city life for a few days and camp in the remote woods of Black Hollow Forest. They had set up camp near a serene lake, laughter and the smell of toasted marshmallows filling the air. But now, things had taken a dark turn. "Did you hear that?" Katie whispered, her flashlight shaking in her hand. "Yeah," Mark replied, his face pale in the moonlight. "It sounded like you." Katie nodded, a lump forming in her throat. It was her voice, but she hadn't screamed. It was like listening to a recording of herself, crying out in desperation. She turned to Emily and Jake, who were equally unnerved. "Maybe it's just an echo," Emily suggested, though her voice wavered with doubt. "An echo of what?" Jake retorted, his eyes darting nervously around the dark forest. "Let's just stay close together," Mark said, trying to sound brave. "We should head back to camp and stay by the fire." They moved quickly, their footsteps crunching on the dry leaves. The forest seemed to close in around them, every shadow a potential threat. The air grew colder, and the cries for help continued, now joined by other voices, Mark's, Emily's, Jake's, all pleading for assistance. "Help! Help me! Please, help us!" It was like the forest was mocking them, playing back their voices in a twisted symphony of fear. Katie's heart pounded in her chest, and she tightened her grip on Mark's hand. They finally reached the campsite, but the sight that greeted them sent a chill down their spines. The campfire was out, and their tents were slashed open, contents strewn about. It was as if something, or someone, had ransacked their camp while they were away. "What the hell happened here?" Emily gasped, her voice barely a whisper. "Maybe an animal?" Jake suggested, though he didn't sound convinced. "An animal that mimics voices and cuts through tents?" Katie snapped, panic rising in her chest. Mark stepped forward, inspecting the damage. "We need to stay calm. We'll figure this out." But as the words left his mouth, the cries for help grew louder, more frantic. It was like they were surrounded by an invisible crowd, all screaming in their voices. Katie felt her knees buckle, and she sat down hard on a fallen log. "This can't be real," she muttered, trying to steady her breathing. "This has to be some kind of nightmare." Mark knelt beside her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "We'll get through this. We just need to stick together and think." Jake was pacing, his face twisted in fear and frustration. "We need to get out of here. Now." "And go where?" Emily countered. "We're miles from civilization, and it's pitch black. We could get lost." Katie looked around, trying to think clearly. "Maybe we can wait until dawn. Things might be clearer then." As they debated their next move, a new sound pierced the night. It was the same plea for help, but now it sounded distorted, almost demonic. The voice was deeper, rougher, filled with malice. "Help me, please, help me!" The friends huddled together, their flashlights darting around the trees. Then, in the distance, they saw a figure, a shadowy silhouette just beyond the tree line. "Who's there?" Mark called out, his voice trembling. The figure didn't respond. Instead, it seemed to melt into the darkness, leaving behind only the echo of their cries. Katie's mind raced. She had heard stories about Black Hollow Forest, tales of people vanishing without a trace, of strange apparitions and ghostly voices. She had dismissed them as urban legends, but now, standing in the middle of this nightmare, she wasn't so sure. "We need to go," she said firmly. "We can't stay here. We need to find a way out." The group reluctantly agreed, gathering what they could carry. They formed a tight line, Mark leading the way with his flashlight. The forest seemed to grow more sinister with each step, the echoes following them, taunting them. After what felt like hours, they stumbled upon an old, overgrown trail. It was barely visible in the dim light, but it was a path, possibly a way out. They followed it, hope flickering in their hearts. As they walked, the cries grew fainter, and the forest seemed to thin out. They could see the first light of dawn breaking through the trees. Relief washed over them, but it was short-lived. Suddenly, Mark stopped, his flashlight illuminating a weathered sign. It read, "Welcome to Black Hollow Forest. Enter at your own risk." Katie felt a shiver run down her spine. They had been walking in circles. "No, this can't be," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. Before anyone could react, the ground beneath them gave way, and they tumbled into a deep pit. The darkness swallowed them, and the last thing Katie heard before she lost consciousness was her own voice, echoing through the trees. "Help me!" When she awoke, she was alone. The pit was empty, and the forest was silent. She called out for her friends, but there was no response. Panic set in, and she scrambled to climb out of the pit. As she reached the top, she saw the figure again, standing at the edge of the clearing. It beckoned to her, and she felt an inexplicable pull to follow. With no other option, she stepped forward. The forest seemed to close in around her, the echoes starting up again, louder and more insistent. Katie knew she had to keep moving, to find her friends and escape this nightmare. But as the figure led her deeper into the woods, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were all trapped in a never-ending loop, their voices forever echoing through the haunted trees of Black Hollow Forest.